Well, good afternoon. Nice to meet you all. Just maybe a word of explanation. Why have I got the opportunity to talk to you? I mean, alluded a little bit of my background. I spent 25 years of my life being a stupid chemist, extracting polysaccharides or polymers from natural resources like seaweeds and trees and plants. And because we were chemists, we weren't biologists and we weren't nutritionists, we hadn't a clue what we were throwing away. And we threw away antioxidants, we threw away proteins, minerals, vitamins, and what you're going to see is a little bit of the story untold of sort of the last 30 years in industry. The last 10 of the industry has been running my own research company, which we set up in Cork. We wanted to leave multinationals and we didn't want to leave Cork, so if you want to live in Cork and do what I do, you have to do it yourself. So that's what Cybercolloids is. And where it's really coming together is most of my life I've been playing with the texture of foods, but latterly as we've started to realize what we've been throwing away and there's nutritious compounds in there, we've been sucked into the world of nutrition. We're not nutritionists, we're chemists. We're still simple chemists, but we're trying to learn to interact with the world of food texture and food nutrition. So I'll just tell you a little bit of who we are, what we do, then the whole aspect of health and hydrocolloids, how that's snuck up on us. And I'm going to give you an example of a standard product called guar gum. And I'm not going to talk about the fruit, we haven't got enough time, which I said in the introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about seaweed, which is also quite topical at the moment. It was even on the news this morning about lamb in Scotland being fed on seaweed only and having a special flavour and a special texture. So as I said, we set it up 10 years ago, and where we seem to have morphed into is that what we thought was just going to be a consultancy company telling you, asking for your watch, telling you what the time is, giving your watch back. We've actually turned into a contract research company. We're actually doing outsourced research for companies from China to Florida, from Norway to India. If you'd told me that after I'd be doing 10 years from when I started, I'd have said, whatever you're on, can I have some of it too? It is all the power of the internet. People find us on the internet, people engage us, and we seem to be into an age of open innovation where companies are prepared to outsource research outside of the boundaries of their company, and that's what we do. We're the back room for a lot of people. The products that we are involved with are known as hydrocolloids or polysaccharides. They're large polymers that interact with water and ions to form thickening and gelling in foodstuffs. As you take salt, sugar, and fat out of foods, your mouth doesn't like it. God's got a great sense of humor. He's hidden all these molecules in all sorts of strange places of nature, which we're still finding, and we're learning how to take those out of nature and putting them back into foods in a palatable way. That's basically the trick of the business. Where do these things come from? Well, as I've already said, they come from things like trees and seeds, plants, vegetables, seaweeds, and microorganisms. And the products you might see on your food labels are the next level. The gum arabics, the carayas, the guar gums, locust bean gum, pectin, these marine products, alginates, carrageenans, agars, and xanthan and gellan. Now that level of the value chain, those products are called hydrocolloids or food gums. They're sold on thickening ability or gelling ability in distilled water, which means nothing to a food formulator. They aren't sold on this is what it's going to do for you in ice cream, this is what it's going to do in your baked goods. It's told purely as a chemical in a nonsensical way. So there's another set of value chain where there's another set of skills, which is at the bottom, which tells you all about how to combine them with foods. Now, the top part of that slide is all about sourcing the raw materials and turning them into a pure compound that can be sold in a consistent way against a regulation E number. And that gives me the opportunity to go to places like the Philippines, Indonesia, to India, and because a lot of these compounds are hidden in exotic plants. So if any of your graduates want to go have a career and makes you travel, it's an interesting subject to get into. The bottom half of that slide is all about incorporating those compounds into foods to be able to provide texture. Ultimately, the bottom half is where you and I as a consumer will eat the product and decide we like it. So what are we doing in that space? Well, we're arrogant enough to say we've built a team, a Centre of Excellence in polysaccharides. There's now 12 of us, full-time, wake up in the morning thinking polysaccharides in food. We deal with universities, application centres. Obviously the most local to us is UCC. They've been very good to us. We can go in and use their food hall We've also been involved with Europe, FP7, with Ulster and Reading, Fraunhofer Institute in Germany and Iowa over in the States. And the other group of people we tap into are sort of what I call the semi-retired people. In multinationals, when you get above 50, you're too expensive and you're let out to grow, you're let out to grass. These people have got a wealth of experience, they get bored playing golf, and they're only too willing to tap into a project on a day-to-day basis. I'm not taking responsibility for income for them, but if they're there and they want to spend 5 days in the month working on a project for me, I pay them and they go away and they go back to playing golf. And they give me 30, 40 years of experience that I can't get. I can't buy it in a book, I can't get it anywhere else. But there's a wealth of people like that out there which have been discarded by industry, which is a shame. But we've got a lot of fun dealing with those people. We deal with the people who make the hydrocolloids, and we deal with the raw materials suppliers. People who grow seaweed, people who are orange juice manufacturers who have byproduct called orange peel. We deal right with the people in the agricultural side. And then we also deal with the factories that are using these products in industry, in food and pharma. And overall, our idea is to create value and innovate cost effectively. So what are we offering? We offer a variety of activities, from research to taking the project forward and thinking about it in an innovational way to take it into market. We are ex-industry people, so we don't do research for publishing papers and patents. We do research to make our clients money. We don't sell anything, but we will go out and help our clients sell. We will do the technical support and the marketing support. We'll even roll our sleeves up and get involved with the factories. We have got people who are comfortable in dealing with thousands of tons of raw material and converting those into white powders. People who are using these hydrocolloids, there's a lot of myth around out there, and we will demythologize what's been published and try to get people to buy on a scientific basis. And then we'll do a bit of training. Again, there's a lot of nonsense written about these products, and we're only happy enough to sort of tell people the practical truths of how these things can be used in foods. Interestingly, one of our neighbours is a multinational drinks company who uses gum arabic in their drinks. They've probably been using it for 30 years, and they retained us recently to say we don't really know why this product is used in our drinks. They use it, but they don't know why. Because somebody put it there 30 years ago, and they're scared to take it out. So we've had a lot of fun. Who we'd have thought were experts in the field, but actually they're experts in using it, but they don't know why they're using it. So let's look at how these products are used. Traditionally, somebody wakes up in somewhere like Indonesia and they have a pile of seaweed and they think, what can we do with it? Okay, we can make carrageenan. So let's start looking at the chemistry. So they learn the chemistry and the processing, and they make a food ingredient called carrageenan. That's the product that they sell in a water gel, or they sell it as a viscosifier. They have no clue about the next part of the value chain, which is actually, they do know about rheology measurement. They don't know about the next bit, which is incorporating into the foods. You remember one of those slides I showed you? There's a skill of taking the hydrocolloid and making it into a texture product. That's a whole new skill base. When you put it into a competing food matrix where you've got proteins, you've emulsifiers, you've got other fibers, you've got flours, you've got a combination of products competing for water. So the products can behave totally differently to what you expect. And then the next side is something that I never learnt until I joined Unilever 25 years ago. Suddenly you're introduced to, well, how does it actually taste? As a chemist, I'd never thought of that. But as a consumer, of course I think about it. So we had to learn the skill of learning about what drives a consumer. If I said to a Japanese consumer, this is jelly-like, they will expect the product to pop in their mouth when they bite it. If I say to a Western consumer, it's jelly-like, you probably expect it to melt in your mouth like gelatin. So the word jelly means something totally different to different people in the world. So we had to try to translate the rheology of the product we're dealing with the sensory, because consumers have got choices. So that whole left-hand side of the triangle is all about texture, and that's where I lived for 25 years. Now that I'm understanding nutrition, we've developed the right-hand side of the triangle, which is the same chemistry, but we're now dealing with nutraceuticals. We're now dealing with compounds that are in nature, the same raw materials we're dealing with, which actually are interacting with your body physiologically. So we need to set up physiology studies to see what they're doing, and then we have to come up with a nutritional story. One of the examples of that nutritional story is if you are eating high fiber products, you're probably starting to eat a lot of inulin from chicory. Now, we weren't predisposed to eating chicory. I didn't eat chicory as a kid, but you are now being inundated with chicory in your beverages, in your bars. You could have 8 or 10 grams of inulin in your body by the time it's lunchtime, which could start giving you some stomach problems. But the reason it's there is because it's the most researched soluble fiber or prebiotic. And we need, as an industry, we need to learn a little bit more to give you alternatives. And our objective is to be able to give people tasty, healthy food. Very quickly, what are we doing around the place, just to show you there are people being innovative. We're in the States playing around with proteins and polysaccharide texture systems. We have a new fruit fiber coming from waste product from grapefruit. We have a new potato product coming out of Denmark, which is a byproduct from the starch industry, which is giving some nutritional and texture benefits. We've got a very interesting product coming out of Norway, which is basically ground up trees, which act as an amazing fat replacer and can reduce fat by 25% and give you a much healthier product without any compromise to food texture. We're still playing with seaweed. We can't get rid of seaweed in our blood. Carrageenan continues to pop up all over the place in China and in Malaysia. Xanthan is a product made from biofermentation, and we're involved with our company out there in Inner Mongolia, which has been an interesting project. We've been involved in India with enzymes and guar gum, and laterally we've been playing around with different products of seaweed, which I'll come back to. So we've got a global reach, a little company down in Cork. 95% of our business is overseas. So I want to give you an example of a polymer which is traditionally been a cheap thickener and is now become a very expensive product on the market and not really understood in food anymore. It's been totally transformed in the last 2 years. But the work we were doing is all about the soluble fiber that I mentioned, the inulin. If you look at Europe's figures, you'll see that there's a huge market, 128 million in soluble fiber in 2004, which has grown to 232 million in 2011. But look at the States. It hasn't even started in the States. Now, this is all about the subject of digestive health. People in Europe are obviously much more comfortable in talking about stomach bloating, what happens in our digestive system and what comes out of our bodies. In the States, they're not comfortable talking about it at all. It's a very private matter, and therefore the soluble fiber market hasn't taken off in the States yet. But soluble fiber is all about prevention of cancer. Colon cancer is all about eating fiber well, having a high fiber diet. And unless you're prepared to tackle that into your diet, then you're possibly going to have colon or stomach cancer issues. If you look at Africa, low incidence of cancer in the bowel simply because they're high fiber eaters. You're getting it from the government, you're getting it from every angle. This is another fiber that you can take in an easy way. So if you take something like our products that we normally deal with, I'm normally putting in 0.5% of a product into foods, and it gives you a little bit of texture, it gives you a little bit of gel. That's not physiologically important. If I give you something that's really interacting with your body, I'm going to have to put 3 grams per 100 grams, 3% into a drink. Now, if I put 3% of a typical hydrocolloid into a drink, you're going to need a knife and fork to eat it. 3% is just too much. So we have to modify its structure to be able to get 3% into a drink. So we've done that with guar. Now, guar gum normally has a molecular weight, a natural molecular weight, of 4 million Daltons. It's a very cost-effective thickener. You can put 0.1%, 0.2% into a foodstuff and you get the thickening you're looking for. But it is not physiologically important. There is a product on the market called partially hydrolyzed guar gum, invented by the Japanese, a company called Teo. And as a consumer-orientated person, that is a disastrous name. If you were to pick up a yogurt which had partially hydrolyzed guar gum on it, it sounds as if it's a mistake. So you're probably not going to buy it. But it has the scientific basis to say that PHGG is actually a good product for your intestines. A lot of literature on it, but it's all been done for medical foods. It's all been done for hospitals, where consumers don't really see the label and they're given it to them by a nurse, and therefore they don't have an option of purchase. But for the mainstream consumer products, PHGG is a disaster. So we came out with a product that I try to understand what do these different molecular weight fractions do in foods. Well, the top half of the molecular weight is traditionally all about texture, and if it's in a food product, people will say, that's too gummy. I don't like it. It's got a nasty sort of gummy taste in the mouth. Okay, so guar gum is known as gummy. But as you reduce the molecular weight, it actually becomes positive, it becomes creamy. Physiologically, the higher molecular weights are all about cholesterol reduction, but the lower molecular weights are all about being prebiotic or soluble fiber. So we need to try to understand the structure and the texture of the product with the physiology. That's the challenge that we have. I won't go into all these details, but needless to say, you end up having to do some tests with consumers where you have to ask them, have you got a creamy mouthfeel, a creamy taste, or perceived fat level? And you can see the product with 1% fixed cream had an intense creamy mouthfeel, an intense creamy taste, and had a full fat feel to it. And it was low-fat yogurt. So we actually came able to come up with a product which had low fat, but had all the sensory characteristics of full fat, which is a good news story. And there's the examples of the little bits of yogurt. So that's the guar story, basically taking a traditional hydrocolloid, looking at it slightly differently to say, how can we change it so we can incorporate more into foods so that it can be physiologically important to you, at the same time not sacrificing taste. Because ultimately, if it doesn't taste good, you're not going to buy the products. Now, in my travels around the world, switching the subject to seaweed, I was puzzled that when I was in Asia, the Japanese treat seaweed with great respect. They call it sea vegetables. They scour the world for every species of seaweed you can get your hands on. They store it in warehouses, and they treat it very, very well. Your average consumer in Japan will be very familiar with the seaweeds, will be going out and buying them just the way we buy carrots and broccoli. They go out and buy the different species of seaweeds. We don't. We used to, in the Western Board of Europe. We have product here in Ireland called dulse or dillisk, depending on which part of Ireland you're from. My grandmother would have given it to me and told me it would have grown hair on my chest and made me healthy, but it tasted not really good. But there still is a fringe market of people who still eat dulse in the world. You can't get enough of it. Everything that's is harvested is sold. It's seen as a source of nutrition, and it's actually an acquired taste where people will chew it while having a drink, and they'll just nibble away at it, and they'll think they're doing something healthy for themselves. Well, they are. But what is the scientific basis of seaweed? Basically, seaweed has been incorporated in this slide in lots of different ways. As a whole food, as I've just described, where you're eating it as a lump of seaweed, you're chewing it. In Japan, they have slices of it. You've probably eaten nori yourself, where the whole seaweed has been processed and incorporated into food. Then as we go around to the processed food ingredients, it's been ground into a powder in some way, or it's been processed in some way. Or you keep going round, it's less processed, it's involved in a garnish. There's a cheese with dulse in it, I've noticed on the market here. You'll find biscuits with little flecks of seaweed in it. But most of it is in Asia. There's very few Western products are using seaweed. And the reason is because we don't understand the total nutrition picture. But trying to put it into layman's terms, a portion of seaweed has got more fiber than a banana. It's got more calcium than a portion of cheese. It's got more antioxidants than a glass of wine. That's not there, but that's why I drink a glass of wine rather than eating a seaweed. It's got low fat. It's got natural multivitamins. It is a natural source of nutrition. The challenge is, how do we get it palatable? How do we incorporate it into foods? And how do you, as a consumer, accept it that it's something that actually you should buy and take seriously? There's a lot of science about it. Basically, the alginate that's in the seaweed is all about lower bile fermentation, which is this anti-cancer thing, and an immune response. There's products called beta-glucans, which is, again, preventing putative effects in the lower gut. So you can read it, you can see it, it's there, but we just aren't using it. Then there's a whole area of antioxidants. We were involved with a project where we wanted to get at the fiber aspect of the seaweed, but the products tasted terrible. So we didn't know what the substances were, because we were stupid chemists, that these substances that were causing the bitterness were actually antioxidants. We took the antioxidants out of them, we put them into some food systems, and we found them to be very, very powerful antioxidants, better than rosemary, which would be a traditional preservative that would be used in foods. So we went to Europe and we got some money, and we're now in the middle of a human intervention study in Reading University to see, what do these antioxidants do? Are they anti-inflammatory? How do they engage in the body? Because they're very high yielding in seaweeds, and they're very powerful antioxidants. And they were substances we were throwing away. They were substances we didn't like because they didn't taste right. But if we could actually extract them from the seaweed first and sell those as an ongoing product, then we can go back in and get our polysaccharide at a lower base, at a lower cost. So what was a problem has turned out to be an opportunity. Also, we've just got some money to start looking at seaweed as a taste precursor. In Asia, again, you'll find that there's a term called umami, I don't know where you come across. That's basically one of our fifth senses, that it's all about the flavors in our mouths. When we start cooking, we start with tomatoes, mushrooms, maybe a little bit of onions, and we put all that together, and then we can make loads of different foods, because you've got your basic flavors in those substances. In Asia, they start with tuna flakes and seaweed. They don't start with mushrooms, they don't start with tomatoes, they don't start with onions. And they get that flavor, the strong, intense flavor you associate with Japanese food and Chinese food, invariably starts with the tuna flake and the seaweed. So why is it that they're doing that and we aren't tapping into those flavor compounds? Well, to start answering those questions, we're just getting some research money, and that project is kicking off next month with a consortium of researchers. So we're quite interested to see what comes out of it. Because if you look at the level of, keeping with the flavor compounds, flavors are made up of volatiles and non-volatiles. And in seaweeds, we've got a mixture of the two. And I haven't got that slide. So basically, there are compounds that are in seaweeds, particularly the one we don't like. It's all in Chinese food. It's just escaped me. The MSG. The monosodium glutamate. There are glutamate molecules in seaweed which are not MSG, but they give the same type of glutamate in the mouth. So if we can get natural glutamate taste molecules into foods without all the MSG stuff, then that's a positive. And that's what the research project is all about. So my conclusion really is that seaweed is a nutritious vegetable with textural and flavor attributes that we should take seriously. And just in finishing, I'd just like to show you this. In 2000 BC, we were told here, eat this root, it's good for you, it'll cure everything. In 1000 AD, when Christianity really got established in Europe, we were told that root was heathen, say this prayer. 1850, we were told the prayer was superstitious because we're now in the age of science, here drink this potion. 1960, we were told, well, that potion's snake oil, here swallow this pill because we're in the age of antibiotics. Now we're told this pill is ineffective, take this pill in 85, this is antibiotics. Now we're told the antibiotics don't work anymore, here eat this root. So everything is cyclical. So please take your raw materials, your seaweeds, your vegetables seriously, incorporate them into foods, and may you live well and be nutritious going forward. Thank you very much. Well, they've come to us as a research SME, which allows their consortium to get extra brownie points and gives us a work package. We're not big enough to go to a Fraunhofer and say, we would like to lead a project. So in the mix of things for Europe, having an SME in your consortium who can carry out research is a big advantage to the consortium. So we've benefited by that. So we've been played as an SME beneficiary and we've played as an SME RTD. We can play both. I don't. Well, dulse would be a product that you can buy easily. The wakamis, the noris. There's a great book by a lady from Sligo. She's a medical doctor, Pranny Rattigan, and it's a recipe book of how to incorporate seaweeds into your foods. And most markets, I don't know about markets up here, but in Cork, the English market would have most sources of seaweed. You can buy a lot of seaweed on the internet in small packets. But before you start with the packets, start with a recipe. And I couldn't recommend highly Pranny's book. It's a great book, lovely presented, make a lovely present for somebody. She grew up in Sligo. Her grandmother would have been proud. She was filmed by the BBC in the series The Secret Garden, and her secret garden was her beach. And she tended her beach, she looked after her beach, she grew the seaweed she wanted, and then she shows how, in the BBC programme, she shows how she cured them, dried them, and then reconstituted them back into foods.
So these seaweeds that you see advertised on the shelves in the health food shops, dried out,
yeah.
Could be dulse,
could be dulse, it could be things, lovely names like sea lettuce, sea spaghetti. Clearly they have had food uses in our country, but we've lost the art of incorporating them.